It takes all of us in the Boulder Valley School District working together to protect our children and ensure their well-being. Today I want to ask for your help on a particularly sensitive issue: child abuse and neglect. As educators, we are around kids every day, building great relationships that may help us to spot when something is not right. We ask for every staff member to stay vigilant and to immediately take action if they suspect that a child has been abused or neglected. You don't have to be a teacher or a school nurse. In fact, every school district employee is a mandatory reporter, whether or not you're at one of our schools or on the clock. Thank you for your attention to this very important matter. The decision isn't always easy, but it can be life-saving. Together, we can provide the safest environment and the best education possible for every one of our students.
Hi, I'm Randy Barber, and today I'll be your guide as we discuss child abuse and neglect and our role as Boulder Valley School District employees as mandated reporters. When you're finished watching this video, you'll know the potential signs of child abuse and neglect, how to file a report with the proper authorities, and legal protections for those that make a report. The most important thing that we can convey is that all employees who have a reasonable suspicion that a child has been abused or neglected must report that suspected abuse. It's not just district policy, it's the law. Failing to report is a Class 3 misdemeanor in Colorado, punishable by up to 6 months in jail and/or a fine of up to $750. Additionally, there's the potential of civil liability, which may result in the cost of defense and award of damages against you, and professional liability, which may result in discipline, demotion, or dismissal, and the possible suspension or revocation of credentials. Please know that your legal obligation is unmet until you've made a report through the state's Child Abuse Reporting Hotline, a law enforcement agency, or the county's Child Protective Services agency. That means that simply reporting to your supervisor, a site administrator, school principal, school counselor, or another person in a position of authority does not substitute for the mandated report. One of the easiest ways to make a report is through the state's Child Abuse Hotline, 1-844-CO for kids. Again, that's 1-844-264-5437. So what are some of the potential signs of abuse? Well, it's important to know first and foremost that there are various types of abuse, some more obvious than others. Physical abuse includes bruises, welts, burns, cuts, or other injuries inflicted on a child, and the circumstance indicates that such condition may not be the product of an accidental occurrence. Sexual abuse includes sexual assault or molestation, sexual exploitation, or prostitution. Emotional abuse is an identifiable and substantial impairment in a child's intellectual or psychological functioning or development, or a substantial risk of impairment of a child's intellectual or psychological functioning development. Neglect is a case in which a child is in need of services because a child's parents, legal guardian, or custodian fails to provide adequate food, clothing, shelter, medical care, or supervision that a prudent parent would give. A mandatory reporter must make a report if they have reasonable cause to know or suspect a child, someone under the age of 18, has been subjected to abuse or neglect, or they have observed the child being subjected to circumstances or conditions that would reasonably result in abuse or neglect. This should happen immediately, as soon as reasonably possible. Waiting to make a report, even if it's just the next day or after the weekend, is still considered a failure to report. Finally, if more than one employee has learned about or witnessed child abuse or neglect, only one report is required. One employee can contact the proper agency and file the paperwork, but they should still list the other employees who have a reasonable suspicion of abuse or neglect. Will all employees have the same reasonable suspicions? No, employees' training, education, and experiences differ, so their conclusions may differ as well. The bottom line, however, is that if an employee has a reasonable suspicion, whether or not others agree, that employee must report it to the state's Child Abuse Hotline, Child Protection Agency, or law enforcement agency. When you contact the state's Child Abuse Reporting Hotline, law enforcement, or county child protective services, they'll ask you several questions, including specifics about the family, like contact information and information about the child's siblings. Before calling, we encourage employees to prepare by filling out the child abuse reporting form on the BVSD website. What happens if the alleged perpetrator is an employee or someone that has contact with students? The following steps must be taken. Make a report to the appropriate agency as previously described in this training. Immediately make a verbal report to your administrator. If you are unable to speak to an administrator, contact the BVSD Human Resources Director. Mandated reporters who make a report or participate in an investigation in good faith are immune from criminal prosecution, civil liability, or termination of employment, and good faith is presumed. The district will defend its employees who file reports consistent with district policy in the course and scope of their employment against any actions or claims that may result from making the reports. A quick note, there are a few things that you should never do if you suspect abuse because they may compromise or inhibit the investigation. Do not investigate on your own. Question witnesses or obtain written statements. Do not make any promises to the child regarding what action may or may not be taken. Do not remove or rearrange any clothing on the child for visual inspection of underclothing, breasts, buttocks, or genitalia. Do not contact the alleged victim's house or alleged perpetrator prior to making a report. Do not keep a log of child abuse reports. Remember, this is a confidential matter. Do not discuss it outside of making a report or cooperating with an investigation by an agency or BVSD officials. If a parent or guardian asks questions about the incident or report, let them know that school personnel are not at liberty to talk about child abuse reports. You may, however, discuss the district's general child abuse policy, but give no details on this or other incidents. You may also refer them to an investigating agency. If you need assistance interacting with a parent, contact your administrator. As educators, we care deeply about the safety and well-being of our students, and that's why we must take our obligation to report child abuse and neglect seriously. If you suspect child abuse or neglect, report it immediately. Call the state's child abuse hotline, law enforcement, or county protective services. If an employee has a reasonable suspicion, whether or not others agree, that employee must report it. Unsure of whether or not the situation should be reported? Consult with one of the agencies listed here. The hotline may be the easiest option. Just call 1-844-CO-4-KIDS. Again, that's 1-844-264-5437. Remember, it is not enough to report the incident to a principal, counselor, or district leader. Thank you so much for your help in keeping Boulder Valley students safe.